interviewing some of the biggest names in the sport of hockey and leaving it all on the ice. It's time for the No Holden Back Podcast. Here is your host, Ben Holden.
Hi again, everybody. Welcome into an all-new edition of No Holden Back here on the Sin Bin. I am thrilled to be joined today by, without question, the Dean of Broadcasters in the American Hockey League, Don Stevens. Don, how are you, my friend?
Good, and thank you for not saying the old guy. The old guy, Dean is, I guess that's an acceptable word, although that has connotations that go along with it too.
Well, nevertheless, man, you and I first met. I'll kind of go back to that to kind of set the table for those watching. I got hired in Lake Erie in 2009. It was there 2 seasons. I had a friend. He's still a friend. He's from your neck of the woods, Sean Richland. I know you remember Richie.
Yeah.
And Sean did TV with me my first year there because him and I had done a lot of stuff for ESPN over the years, and we had a great relationship. And you were the guy, he said, make sure you get close with Don Stevens because the guy's the best around. So that's how you and I met, and I've always enjoyed and did enjoy the time that we saw each other. We saw a lot of each other being in the same division. How has life been for you in the last half year? I mean, that's an age-old question, I guess, for all of us, man.
Well, you know, I remember back, because we're always so busy in this league in January and February and that. I remember back in February, after we had played, I think 4 games in a week or something, I got off the bus and I was just so tired. And I said something like, oh man, if I could just get like a week off where I didn't have to go anywhere or do anything or see anybody, that's all I want. So actually this whole coronavirus thing is my fault. It's been very quiet. I've been like a hermit in a cave for how many months it's been, since March the 12th. So I've been to the grocery store and the gas station, and I had a doctor's appointment and an eye appointment. I think that's it. That's all I've been since March.
Wow. So what was the last game you did then?
March 11th, Wednesday night. And we were supposed to play Friday night also at home. And I remember going home after, it was the night that the first basketball player who was that? I can't remember who that was.
Rudy Gobert of the Utah Jazz. They played the Pistons here in Detroit outside. I live outside Detroit. It's Rudy Gobert.
Yeah. So it was that night that it came out that he had the virus. And then I remember getting ready to go home, and one of the guys in the office said, hey, you know, keep an ear open because who knows what's going to happen. And you know what, hit the fan after that.
Yeah. So how have you filled the time, man? You guys would you have made the playoffs? Where were you guys at for 1920? Would you have been in the postseason?
Yeah, we were second in the division. You know what? That's like years. That might be decades ago. I can't remember that far back. But I think we were second in the division, maybe third overall in the league. We were doing really well. It was a good season. Yeah,
that's too bad. So you guys would have, played April and hopefully into May and all that. What are the biggest things that you mentioned? Some of the things you've done. Is there anything else you've done to kind of fill that void?
I've spent a lot of time cooking and sleeping and spending time with my psychiatrist, Dr. Netflix, and watering my flowers and sitting at the top of my driveway watching the neighbors walk by, and that's about it. That's all I've been doing.
Yeah. What are you hearing now? I know you don't have an answer, but what are you hearing now in terms of when things may start up again?
Well, the last word from the American Hockey League was that they had set December the 4th as a startup time. But of course, they're going to kind of mirror the NHL. I mean, they want their players since they're all NHL players, they want to have the training camp. They want their players all together. Then they'll disperse the teams and they'll start their season at about the same time. So that was the last word. Now, I saw the other day where Bettman said that he didn't think now that the NHL would start until January sometime. So I'm pretty sure, although it hasn't been said, nothing's been stated, or I don't know if it's even been discussed yet, but I would have to assume that the AHL would follow along and be at least January. But with that being said, I really don't know what might happen for the future because, as you well know, the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, and all of those leagues, they can survive and they can actually make some bucks off of TV revenues. We don't have TV revenues in the American Hockey League, so I really can't see that especially some of the teams that are maybe locally owned and that would be able to operate without having fans in the stands. So that's a real question mark at this time.
Yeah, nobody really knows, and appreciate that insight that you have so far, Don. So 50 years you've done this as an announcer. How do you feel that you've made it 50 years in this wild and crazy business that we're all in, man? What have been the keys for you to survive in this?
Well, because I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. I haven't. Yeah, I haven't made it past that point yet. So no, I tell people, well, it beats working for a living. Right. Although there's lots of hours and tough travel and it's been parts of it have been not so great over the years, like all the things that I've missed with family and things that maybe normal people do, right? That you miss out on. And of course, when we work, it's always Friday, Saturday nights, and quite often holidays. And so and that's when everybody else is having their family gatherings and stuff. But so that's been sort of tough. But again, it's something that really, it hasn't been a job, I guess. I spent a lot of hours and I worked pretty hard at it, but it just hasn't been a job.
Yeah, I've always said very similar to you. I don't want to get a real job and I don't want to grow up. So I totally relate, man. And that's really, really awesome. We're going to get into a lot of your career as we go along here in this podcast. But I want to go back to where it started for you. You were telling me offline a minute ago, you were born in Wainwright, Alberta, correct?
Correct.
So you moved there after you were around 6 years old to Vancouver. You bounced around. So tell us about what it was like, doing that. That's tough on anybody, but as a kid, that's got to be a little tough. What are some things you remember from all the moving that you did in your younger years?
Well, I don't know. It's so tough for a younger kid. If you get older, then it gets tough. But so I just moving with my parents as they went. We were on a farm in Alberta to start out with, and then we went to Vancouver, and my parents had a business in Vancouver for 6 or 7 years, and they didn't really care for that. So we went to Denver and went to work for my uncle, who had a big toy business actually in Denver, and my parents both worked for him. In fact, I did too. And that's so I went through high school in Denver, and then after that, sort of bummed around, not trying to figure out. I did go for one semester of college in Denver, but when I was in the student union playing hearts instead of going to my final exam, my parents said, I don't think we're doing that anymore. So that was the end of my college career. And I didn't know what I was going to do. It was actually my mother that suggested when I didn't know what I was going to do, she says, well, you talk a lot. Why don't you get into broadcasting? We had a good chuckle over that. But then she pursued it and went and talked to a radio DJ at a radio station in Denver and said, how do you get into broadcasting, blah, blah, blah. And he said, well, you go to a broadcasting school. And she found one in Minneapolis called Brown Institute. So then one day she sprung that on me. She says, well, why don't you try this? And she had sent them a note, and they'd sent a letter back asking for a tape. And so my dad and I went out and we found a tape recorder at Sears, and I read an article out of the newspaper or whatever and sent it off to Brown Institute. Then they sent back a letter, which I think was probably a form letter, saying, oh, you got the greatest voice in the world. You're going to be a tremendous broadcaster, blah, 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 blah. So I ended up going to Minneapolis for broadcasting school for 10 months. And that's how I got started in this business.
That's, you know what, I didn't go to college myself for broadcasting. I went to a school here in Detroit. So you and I shared that. I probably knew that, but you and I haven't seen each other until today since 2011. So that's awesome, man.
Well, it's different. It's different now than it was then. there really wasn't, like, there was no journalism classes per se, or you didn't hear much about it if there was at universities, and that now pretty much you have to have a journalism degree to do anything. But it was simply a case of, in broadcasting back then, and yes, we did actually have automobiles, and there was electricity, so but then it was, you just got in and did it.
Yeah.
I remember my instructor the first day at the broadcasting school says, we're going to teach you as much as we can over the next year, but you won't learn half of in 1 year what you will your first day on the job, which was so true. So, and I went to my first radio station, which was a small town in Nebraska, Grand Island, Nebraska. And I arrived there at 10 o'clock in the morning, and spent the day kind of looking around the radio station. The program director was showing me around, and about 5 o'clock, he says, okay, you're on at 6. And I said, on what? He says, you're on the air at 6. And I had no clue. So I try and find all the buttons and knobs, and 6 o'clock, the office closed, everybody bailed out, and I'm sitting there to do a 6-hour DJ show with no idea what to do. He gave me a log and said, okay, follow this. And I go, what's a log? And so, yeah. So that was quite the indoctrination in the broadcasting world.
No doubt about it. So were you always a man that liked the sport of hockey when you were, prior to getting involved in broadcasting and as a kid?
Well, you already said I'm a Canadian.
Well, yeah, I guess. Dumb question by me, right? I should learn more from guys like you.
Yeah. Well, my dad played a little bit. He played hockey in the winter time, and then played baseball in the summertime when he could get off the farm. And that, so there was my dad and my uncles were always into sports, so I played a little bit as a kid in Vancouver hockey, but. Yeah. When it came to, like, I started out in broadcasting business, I was going to be this big rock jock, I figured, okay, well, I'm going to be a famous DJ and blah, blah, blah. And after about 6 months of that, figured out you're sitting there saying the same things over and over and over for 6 hours a night. And I didn't care for that. And then I got into news, and I was doing news and sports at the same time for quite a while. But eventually I just sort of gravitated to sports more. And the first company that I worked for, Stewart Broadcasting Company, they had, they were going to start doing broadcasts of a team in the old USHL, okay. Which was a semi-pro league at the time in Sioux City, the Musketeers. Yep. And so they didn't know anybody that knew hockey. And they called me one day and said, do you know hockey? I said, well, yeah. You know the rules? Yeah. Okay. Well, we're moving you to Sioux City, Iowa to do the broadcast of the hockey team. And there it went. I was in hockey from there on.
How old were you then, Don?
Let's see, probably 23, 24, something like that.
Wow. How long did you spend in good old Sioux City, man?
Well, it was 3 years in Grand Island, Nebraska.
Prior to Sioux City.
Yeah, which I did everything at the radio station. And that was probably the best thing that could ever happen to me, because I learned the business inside out, up and down. Then I went to Denver as a sports director at a station there. That lasted a year. Then that's when the Stewart Broadcasting Company called me back and wanted me to go to Sioux City to get into hockey. So okay. I moved more into it then. But I started out as a DJ, plus I was doing news, and then I was doing all of our high school broadcasts with football, basketball, baseball, and not only that, but I was the track announcer for stock cars on Friday nights and late model stocks on Saturday nights, and I was doing horse racing at another track, Exarban, I think it was. On Wednesday nights, and then I was doing a DJ show at the local hotel on Thursday night. So I was busy.
You were one of the original fourth line plumbers then, man. You did it all.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's, like I say, that was the best thing. The guys that come out now, and girls, of course, that come out now, and now all they're working on is just one thing not learning the business, and it's not the same.
Yeah, that's my dad's been a carpenter his whole life, and that's one of the great lessons he taught me. Exactly what you're talking about was to be versatile, do a lot of different things, and that's why I do 9 different sports, and so kind of following your lead, man, in that regard, I guess. So, what was next for you? Let me backtrack a little bit. So you had the job with the Musketeers. At what point was it there, or was it another stop where you said, hey, this hockey thing's what I want to do?
I don't know that I've ever made any decisions along the way, period.
Okay.
It's just sort of followed what's come along. I think,
okay.
Like when I was in Sioux City, and you know what? I don't really know how they got my name, but the radio station in Grand Forks wanted to know if I'd be interested in doing the University of North Dakota, and got to checking it out and finding out that, hey, this is pretty good hockey. This is the top collegiate league in the country, which back then was really the only real true Division I hockey in the country. And so yeah. I went there, and I was there for 3 years, doing the Fighting Sioux.
Fighting Sioux, yeah.
Yeah, and worked for KNOX Radio, plus still doing high school football and basketball and stuff too.
Make ends meet.
Well, it was the job, tried to get as much sports on the air as I could, being the sports director at the radio station. So then I had a guy that worked with me, a buddy of yours, Tim Hennessy, and he was doing a lot of the other high school sports and stuff too, and another guy that did the teams, the university's football and basketball was Jim Bowman was his name. He was there. So there was actually 3 of us at a small radio station in Grand Forks, North Dakota, that were doing all these sporting events. Was good. It was actually very good.
That's great. And I spoke, well, I didn't speak to, but through social media on Twitter, Tim Hennessy said to tell you he knew I was doing a show with you this week. And he said, tell Don I say thanks for leaving Grand Forks. He's been there since you left.
Yeah. He got stuck like I got stuck in Rochester.
So 3 years in North Dakota. What were those national championship years? I mean, the Sioux they were the real deal then. So what was it like?
Oh no.
They were down then.
They were bad.
They were bad. Wow.
Bad.
I didn't say that much about North Dakota.
Well, the thing was, I don't know if it was because I left or whatever, but anyway, we had a coach by the name of Rube Bjorkman. What a nice man. But he was up against Badger Bob and Herbie Brooks and how Amo Bassoni and all those great names that were coaching.
McInnes probably still coaching.
Pardon me?
Was McInnes still coaching then at Tech?
Yeah. And some tremendous college programs. So it was a struggle. Gino Gasparini then was the assistant coach, and I kind of hung out a lot with him. And then I left partway into the season, and Gino then became the head coach the next year, and really the program took off at that point, and it became a national powerhouse. So again, it was my fault that they were struggling so much. When I left, they became great.
One thing I've learned in the business, Tim, is it's always the play-by-play guy's fault. So to your point,
I get it. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
I mean, we've done, we being CBS have done this conference, the NCHC, which is now the best conference in college hockey. And there were a couple of years where it was lean and mean in North Dakota. And about every time we did one of their games, we'd get blasted on Twitter. Oh, it's Holden's fault, or it's Starman's fault. Like, come on, man, really? But I've learned to adapt it. I've learned to embrace it. And they have, to me, the best fan base I've ever seen. Not just in hockey, but it's one of the best fan bases I've ever seen in any sport, man. What do you remember about those fans up there?
Loud.
Yeah.
And they certainly were into it. And I don't know. I don't know if I ever really fit in as a community member because it was the I wasn't Scandinavian or anything, so
You weren't Finnish or Swede?
I didn't eat lutefisk. So, but no, I mean, they were great people. They were very nice people. They treated me well, but they were into their hockey.
They're incredibly passionate about their team. So from North Dakota, where was your next stop in this incredible journey that you've had of 50 going into year 51? Where was the next stop for you, Don?
Do we have like 3 or 4 hours here? This might take a while. So it was doing the University of North Dakota. We were playing against Notre Dame in South Bend, and we played Friday, Saturday, and we played Friday night. Saturday morning, I got a call from a guy, the general manager of a team in San Diego, and wanted to know if I'd be interested in, and they needed somebody like today, right away.
All right.
So I said, well, I got another game to do here tonight at Notre Dame, and then I'll get there as soon as I can. So I did the game, and then after the game, I caught a shuttle that went from South Bend to Chicago to the airport, and I caught the red eye. And of course, it's like early winter there, right? And I got my great big coat on and my boots and all this, and I get off the plane on the top step to go down from the plane down to the tarmac. And I stepped out of the plane in San Diego and said, I'm not going back. No way, I'm not going back. Yeah, so I went and I did the interview in that afternoon, and they said, okay, well, we want you to start. And I said, okay, when? They said, like, tomorrow. So I said, well, I'd like to at least have some clothes or something. So that night I caught a plane that went into Minneapolis and then to Grand Forks, and I got there Monday morning, and I packed up my suitcases and as much stuff as I could, and I said to my wife, I sell the house, and then whenever you get a chance, come on out to San Diego. And I left the next morning, so I was back on Tuesday morning in San Diego and getting ready for the season there. So that was a pretty good turnaround.
Sorry, Don, that's awesome. So were they in the IHL then?
No, that was the end of World Hockey, and there was an interim team there, Pacific Coast League, for a year, and then it folded.
All right. So how long were you in America's finest city, as they call it? I love going to San Diego, man. If I moved there, you couldn't get me out of there. How long were you there?
Not long enough.
No, not long enough.
So that, like, World Hockey folded and then I didn't have a job, and I got a call from World Team Tennis, saying, would you be interested in doing World Team Tennis, the Friars? And I said, well, I don't have a job, so yeah. So I did World Team Tennis that summer, and then that league folded. So I'm sitting there in San Diego now. I have a house in North Dakota that can't be sold. I'm in an apartment in San Diego, plus I'd started building a house in San Diego, and I have no job. And then I ended up going to a friend called and said, well, we need a broadcaster in Seattle with the junior team. And I said, well, I don't really want to go to juniors, but I didn't have another job. So I said, okay, well, I guess I'll go there. So then I'm renting a house in so I've got like 4 houses, right? And my wife trying to catch up to me. So that was interesting. So then I ended up in Seattle.
Wow. And how long was the stint there?
That was 2 years. It was two seasons. No, it was 1 season. Then I did Portland Winterhawks for 1, and then I went back to Seattle for 1. But people ask me about why I never made that next step or whatever, and just to fit the timeline in, to tell you, when I went to Seattle, my first day on the job, I got a call from Chick Hearn. Do you remember Chick Hearn?
Absolutely, I remember Chick Hearn 100%.
So he worked for Jerry Buss in Los Angeles. He did the Lakers and that, and he was in charge of the broadcasting department for that organization. And he says, we'd like you to do the LA Kings. And so I said, Well, it's my first day here in Seattle. The owners just moved me here and everything like that. And I said, look, I'll call you back tomorrow. So anyway, I went home and my wife, my then wife, said, there's no way I'm living in Los Angeles. And I just got here. I'm not moving again. Wow. So I called Chick Hearn back the next day and I said, you're not going to believe this, but I feel an obligation to the owner here. And my wife says she won't go to LA. And so I have to turn you down. So anyway, I was the brunt of many jokes for a while after that when the guy that turned down the NHL for junior hockey.
Wow, I don't know if I knew that. So then, of course, they hired Bob Miller, and Bob's in the Hall of Fame now.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's how that went, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, they hired Pete Weber first, and then Miller was doing the TV and stuff.
Oh, I didn't know Pete was there. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I mean, that's I couldn't imagine that. I mean, how do you feel about that now when you talk about that, knowing what could have been? I know it's what could have and should have and all that, but what resonates when you talk and tell that story again?
Well, at the time, I was 29 years old at the time. I figured, okay, well, I'm going to have lots of opportunities because I was getting plenty of calls and stuff, and there was no problem. But it's one of those things that, like, you don't ever want to live with, oh, if only I had done this or done that. But on the other hand, it still comes, I still get a lump in my throat every time I think about that I turned it down because although I did have some opportunities, they never panned out. So that was the one real chance that I had to make that next step. And I could have been in the NHL at 29 years old. So yeah, I'm very disappointed by that. But on the other hand, it's turned out to be a pretty good life here in Rochester.
Yeah, no doubt about it, man. I love that perspective. I wish, I'm that way. I'm almost 50 and
you're old.
I know, man. I'm getting old. I got to dye my hair. I didn't have to dye my hair when we used to see each other all the time, man. My hair wasn't going yet.
Mine's jet black. I do this just to give me this prestigious look, You have the sexiest man in America. That's what I'm working at.
That's terrific, man. All right. So back to the path to get you to Roch. So from Seattle, what was the next step for you, Don, after all that?
Well, I mentioned that I did Portland Winterhawks for a year.
Yep.
And what a great year that was. I was looking at that and I went back and I took a list of the names of the Portland Winterhawks in the 82-83 season, which won the Memorial Cup. Listen to this roster. Ken Yaremchuk, Cam Neely, Rich Crom, Ray Ferrero, Alfie Turcotte, Jim Playfair, Brian Curran, John Kordick, Derek Laxdal, Mike Vernon in goal. What a team that was.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was a great year. So I did them for a year. Then I went back to Seattle. But at the same time, I was doing baseball in Phoenix.
Wow.
So I was doing 72 or 80 games in hockey in the winter in Seattle. And then I was doing 162 games in the summer in Phoenix.
Okay.
And of course, that was just ass backwards, right? Doing hockey in rainy Seattle in the winter, and then cooking hot in Phoenix in the summer. If I could have switched that around, it probably would have been pretty good.
Way to fill the calendar, though.
Huh?
Way to fill the calendar, though.
Oh yeah, it was. So that was 280 games a year or something I was doing. That lasted for 2 years, and that was all I could handle of that. That was just, it was so grueling because the travel was just unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, I've said that to people, why didn't you stay in hockey? And I mean, I want to go back to hockey. I always have, but I will say this to your point about 280 games. The 2 years that I was in Cleveland were probably the two biggest years for me developing as a broadcaster because of all those reps. Like, I didn't do 280, but those reps that I got were so important for me to develop, and my personal life fell apart there, but a lot of good things came from it. But we all go through it if you do this long enough. So where was the next step from those gigs that you had?
Then I went to Salt Lake, the Golden Eagles.
Okay.
For 2 years, and that was just the first year after the Central League folded, and they moved into the International League.
Okay.
So that was the IHL for 2 years, and then I got a call from Neil Smith asking if I'd be interested in going to Adirondack, and I said yes, but they weren't going to be able to pay enough, and the manager at the team in Rochester, George Bergantz, they had come up with the need for a broadcaster, and he talked to Neil Smith, and Smith says, well, I've talked to a guy who's turned us down, but would be good for you. And so he gave him my name, and then I ended up coming here. George Bergantz was the one that hired me here.
That's awesome. And what year was that?
That was 86.
86. I won't tell you how old I was, my friend.
Yeah, I don't want to hear it either.
I was 16. So 86, 87. So John Van Boxmeer was the coach then, right? First
Boxy, yep. Boxy, yeah. He was here my first 7 years here.
Okay. And you've called Roch home ever since you went there, 86, 87. That's been your home and been there ever since.
Yeah. My family was starting to get a little older and really needed to settle in. So we settled in here, and my kids were able to stay at the same school through their teen years and everything. So yeah, we settled in.
What was the state of the Rochester Americans that first year? How was that first season? What are some highlights that you still remember today?
Oh, we won the championship.
Oh, ho hum.
No, the beginning of my stint in Rochester was just incredible. The first half, my first 14 years here, we were in the finals, not just the playoffs, the finals 8 times in 14 years. What a string that was. And yeah, so no, that first year here was just it was a storybook affair. We went through the season. We had a real good season. We got down to the end of the year, and playing the final night of the regular season. We were playing Binghamton, and it was for the league championship that night. And we went into a shootout. And Boxy, he did a lot of different things. We had Darcy Wakaluk, who was in goal that game.
Yeah, I remember him.
Yeah, and we went through the overtime, heading to the shootout, and Boxy changed goalies. He brought in Darren Pupa to take the shootout, which was very controversial at the time. But Pupa came up with a win, and Jack Brownscheidel scored the game winner in the shootout, and so we won the regular season championship that night. And I remember going home. As we got into Rochester and started to turn down that street toward the arena, you know where the distillery is, and it goes across the bridge to the arena. Yeah. That was just jam packed with people all the way across the river on the bridge and into the parking lot there at the War Memorial. Yeah. So then that was a big night. Then we went into the playoffs, and we got through the rounds of the playoffs. We ended up in the finals against Sherbrooke, and we were down 3-1, I think it was, and we came back, made it 3-2. Then we were playing at home. We tied it 3-3. Don Lever went coast to coast and a shorthanded goal for the winner there. And so game 6, then we went to Sherbrooke and ended up beating them there that night. So we won the championship. I remember getting on the plane and flying back. We got into Rochester at about 3:30 in the morning on a charter, and landed at this. It's a company that services charter planes, right? On the opposite side of the tarmac from the airport. Yep. Anyway, we pulled up there and looked out the window, and there's just throngs of people. They were standing outside this fence at 3:30 in the morning on a very cold night, and that was incredible. And then a couple of days later, we had my greatest birthday party ever. I called it my birthday party, but it was in the War Memorial, it let everybody in. We had the big band and celebration of the Calder Cup, which happened to be on my birthday. So
Nice.
So there was they figured about 12,000 people there, 11 or 12,000 in the arena for that.
That's
And
great.
so it was a great year, great finish, and I remember thinking afterwards, well, I guess it's downhill from here.
I was gonna say, based on that, you might have been thinking, well, I guess this is normal. I guess we're gonna. I mean, 8 times in 14 years. That is unbelievable, man. And then you guys go. You guys get another one, 95, 96. Tell us the highlights of that team and the makeup and who the key guys were on that hockey club.
John Tortorella.
Torts.
Need I say more?
I love that guy, man. I would love to work with him, Don.
Well, I'll tell you what, it was interesting. Sometime if you got another whole program, we can do a program on Torts stories.
Let's get him on with you.
Yeah, there you go. He'd probably still be cussing me. No, not really. No, we got along great. He treated me well. I'll tell you what, you had to do your homework with him. When you went in to do an interview with him, which I did every game, before every game,
yeah.
You had to have your questions in order, and they had to be good questions that made sense. You couldn't just throw out, well, what do you think of this, or what do you think? You had to, because he'd bury you if you didn't ask a good question. So he really, I think, helped me in my interviewing process in this business. So he was a good guy. It was fun. You just never knew what was going to happen.
Who were some of the key players that you had on that club that year?
Let's see. Brian Holzinger scored the game-winning goal that night. You know what? When it comes to remember, you know how old I am. You're really putting me on the spot here. I don't remember a whole lot of the players.
Not my intention, Don. You know that.
By that time, everything is starting to run together. We had Dean Melanson. I remember him because he delivered a hit on a Russian player. We were playing Portland in the finals, Game 7, and he put this Russian player almost up into the stands with a huge hit, and we went on and won the game from there. Steve Shields was the goalie.
I know Shields,
who was really struggling at the beginning of the year. We sent him to the East Coast Hockey League in the beginning of the season. He ends up coming back and winning the championship.
Wow.
I don't remember who.
That's all right. You got another one, so you got 2 of those. So I want to go back to Tortorella. I feel you, because the guy I worked with is now the coach of the Rangers, David Quinn, who you obviously know, and the guy did more in my personal life than anyone will ever know. But I'm with you on that, man. I had to be ready for him too. He's not as harsh as I've seen Tortorella be. But any other stories that stand out from when you were with him, the years you were together?
Mostly off-ice stories.
Yeah.
So one night, we're getting into Glens Falls at like 4:00 in the morning.
Oh, yeah.
You've been there, right?
No, but I can relate to the getting in at 4 or 5 in the morning. Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, we pull up, and the trainer had called a guy from the building to let us in or whatever. We get off the bus. Torts goes up to the doors. The doors are locked, right?
Oh, boy.
And the trainer goes around the building because he had to go to the opposite side of the building in Glens Falls to find the security guy to open the door. Well, Torts, his patience level was, shall we say, non-existent. So anyway, he's yanking on the door. It comes partway open, and you could see that on the inside of the door there were the crash bars. You know what those are, right?
Yeah.
And there was 2 doors that were side by side. In the open part, the crash bars from those 2 doors were chained. This great big chain was chaining to shut these doors.
Yeah.
Well, he started yanking on these doors, and he yanked the crash bar right out of the door. And here comes the security guy around the corner, and he stands there with his mouth open, like, what's this, you know? it just yanked it open. And so we just unloaded the equipment, got on the bus and went to the hotel.
Right. Unbelievable, man. That's
One night.
Again, that's one guy I would love to meet and work with. I'm always on the edge of my seat when I see him in a press conference or there's a scrum where they're interviewing him. It's like, all right, what's he going to say now? You know,
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. You worked with a lot of coaches, man, and I know they're all different in their own ways, but was Tortorella the biggest influence on you in your time that you've been in Rochester, or is there another guy?
I'd say Boxy was probably the biggest influence on me.
Okay.
My first coach, because that was my first venture really into the American Hockey League. And I learned so much from him because he was unconventional. Trying to think of an example. And the game has changed a lot from today as to what it was back then. And I think he did a lot to change some of it. For example, the other team's top scoring line, right? You would usually have a fourth line, what they call the fourth line, a checking line that you would put on the ice against them.
Yep.
Well, Boxy says, no, I'm putting my top scoring line out against that top scoring line, and I'm going to be better than them and beat them. And so that was just one way that he kind of changed the game around. Interesting.
You agree with that approach, being in hockey all the years you have?
Well, all he did was win year after year, and I never figured out why he didn't get a better shot at it than because he just won.
Yeah. Interesting. Talking with Don Stevens, longtime radio and TV voice of the Rochester Americans here on this episode. I want to talk to you a little bit about, just kind of the longevity part of it, as we touched on, Don, but, let's say there's some young guys or girls out there, women watching, what would you tell them about life in the American Hockey League? What would be the things front and center for you that you would describe to them about what it's like to have a job in that league?
Well, of course, it depends on what that individual wants to do as far as taking their career somewhere. Do they want to work at it, or do they just want a job to put in a couple hours, go do a game, and then go to the bar with their friends? I figured it out. My first 35 years in the business, I averaged probably around 80 hours a week. Yeah. And you don't get that out of the young kids that are coming along anymore. I mean, they demand that if they put in 9 hours a day, they get an hour off of another day or whatever. Right. It's just, there is no time limit in this business. And maybe it's because I don't have a great brain, if you will, for locking down information. There's guys that you remember Kevin O'Clubja, the writer here in Rochester?
I remember Kevin. Yeah, absolutely.
Used to sit behind you there in the press box.
Yeah, I remember Kevin. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, great guy.
Yeah, so he can say, hey, do you remember back in that game in 1992, the third period when such and such scored that? Are you kidding? I don't remember last game. But I never had the kind of mind that really locked up this information, which is why I never did talk shows. There's guys like him, and I mentioned Pete Weber before, a good friend who's the voice in Nashville. He can come up with any fact or figure you want anytime, and I always had to work at it. I always had to have everything I could down on paper. So I spent lots and lots of time, average probably 3.5 to 4 hours for every hour I was on the air, 3.5 to 4 hours of prep time. So I spent a lot of time doing preparation and getting my notes all together and down on trying to funnel all this massive things of stats and getting them down to like 1 or 2 pages so it was usable and I could get the information when I needed it. But that's the biggest thing. I know that I've spoken to a lot of groups and they say, well, what's the most important thing about broadcasting? And I tell them, well, they say, what was the biggest thing you had to do as far as broadcasting is concerned? And I say, well, taking typing. So that And I started out before there was computers, so everything was typewritten and all that. There was a lot of typing, and of course on computer you're typing. So that's the first big thing. And then they say, well, what's the most important tool you have for being in this business? I say, a good bus pillow.
I got a follow up to that. So the first game that I did in the American Hockey League was in your building, and Lake Erie won in overtime. Sorry. I know I'm not going to ask you about the game. It's not the point.
You cheated.
What's that?
You cheated.
Of course. So I remember this is what I remember. I remember on the bus ride over, David Oliver, I know you remember David Oliver, played in the league, coach. He's now with Quinn. He was our GM. And he kicks me, second seat. You know how that is, riding the bus behind the coach. He's like, hey, Benny. He goes, I'm going to tell you right now, you're in the hardest league in pro sports to work in. And my response was this, Don. I turned and looked at him and went, yeah, right. He woke me up about 2 months later. We were coming down. We played in Hamilton, and we came down from your place to play you guys the next night. We got into the hotel. I think it's a Hilton there downtown we stayed in, right? The Hilton?
It could have been. There is one there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's. I think it was a Hilton at the time. Wakes me up. I'm in my seat, to your point about a pillow. I'm in my seat like a pretzel. And he goes, Benny, remember what I told you a couple months ago? I said, yeah, you were right, Ollie. And I think that's something a lot of people don't understand is, they think it's this glamorous life. And, you tell me why you've done it all these years, and I could probably name a couple things, but why have you continued to do it all these years?
Like I said before, I just don't know what else I would do. I always thought I would do something else, but I never came up with anything else.
Yeah.
Never did. The one thing as far as the travel in this league is concerned, as bad as it gets, I always remember back to juniors in the Western League.
Oh.
I was in Seattle, and we play Kamloops, for example, and we'd leave at 8 o'clock in the morning, and we'd pull into Kamloops in the afternoon around 4:30, stop at the edge of town. The coach would make the players get off the bus and walk the 2 miles to the rink in a blinding snowstorm so they'd wake up. Then we'd play the game, and after the game, we'd get on the bus and head right back home. So that's 26, 28, 30 hours or whatever straight that we were on the road there. I remember one trip with the team. We started out in Victoria, and we played every city in the Western League across Canada, all the way to Winnipeg. And we're 32 days, and we got on the bus after the game in Winnipeg, and we drove straight through to Rochester and got in at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and played that night. That was tough. Yeah,
it's a different animal. I mean, you and I know, excuse me, and a lot of people do know this. I mean, and I'm going back to what Ollie said to me, and you get to the next level, man, where we're all trying to get, and in the National Hockey League, you're not riding a bus for 5, 9, 10, 20, 30 hours. You're on the bus to the rink, to the airport, and you're on a charter, man. So it's a hell of a lot easier in that league than it is in the American League. And I think it is. I mean, doing college stuff, I fly pretty much everything, and it's not that that's hard. It's not, but that league is demanding, man. It's demanding on players, demanding on coaches, demanding on broadcasters, all those things. I want to shift gears a little bit here, Don. And, you've been in Rochester, like you said, for 35 years. What's so special about the hockey community and the support of the Americans all the years that you've been there, about the community of Rochester and that greater Western New York area?
Well, there's kind of been two stories. When I first came here, it was way up here, and then we had some difficult years, and then it went way down here, and then now trying to build it back. But when I came, it was owned by the Knoxes, the team, and they owned the Sabres. And I remember Seymour Knox IV picked me up at the airport the day I arrived and said, "You'll love it here because in Rochester during the winter months, this is the social event of the community," which was absolutely true. Wow. Then, like I say, we got the Sabres started struggling. They had some real problems, and ownership became a disaster there after the Knoxes sold it. And that just resulted in kind of a waterfall effect here in Rochester, and our ownership came in and really struggled after a while, and we became not so popular in the community because we owed everybody money in that. And then finally it got to the point where the Pagulas came along and they bought the team and they started paying off back debts, even though they didn't have to, they did. And we became respected in the community again. But it's been a real struggle. The team is coming back, and we've been doing a whole lot better at getting back up as far as fan support is concerned. But now the difference between then and now is that then in the winter months, there wasn't a whole lot to do other than to going to the hockey game. Now, right. Every major league team in every major league sport, you can see on TV. Right. Every game is on TV. Mm-hmm. And so with losing a lot of those fans and losing the need for season ticket holder for people to get season tickets, because one thing we did was we expanded the building to over 10,000 seats. Oh, nice. And so the people didn't feel the need now to get season tickets, and that really took us downhill again too. Trying to build that support back has been a long struggle, but again, since the Pagulas came along, it's really changed things, and it's getting better and better.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. I always love coming to your barn, and first couple of times I was in there looking at just all the great history. I believe, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, I know you will, that only Hershey has been in the city they're in longer than Rochester. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah. Hershey's the oldest team in the league, and we're second. Yeah. That's
amazing. Let's talk a little Hershey Rochester. I mean, those are incredible rivalry games, obviously. Anything stand out from all the years there, whether it's, a story about going there or a game there or a player? Is there anything that you have in your mind in regard to the old Hershey Bears and the Amerks?
We had wars, and I mean literally wars.
Wow.
One of the most bizarre nights I've ever spent in hockey was in the playoffs. We were out of our building in Rochester, so we were playing our games in Buffalo, at the big building in Buffalo.
Yeah.
And we go up for warm-ups and look on the ice. Our players are out there for warm-ups, and Hershey's out there, and they've got like 6 extra guys or something that are out there for warm-up. This was before there were rules, right?
Right.
John Paddock was the coach. So does that tell you anything?
Yeah.
And pretty soon in warm-ups, there's a confrontation at center ice, and it just escalated to it was just a brawl on the ice. And they were going after our tough guy, Andy Risto. And I remember they had a couple of guys had him down on the ice, and another one kicked him in the head and put him in the hospital. He never played again. And it was just an unbelievable night. We did come back and beat him in the series. But that was it was just one of those nights. If you wanted to see a massive brawl, that was the night to be there.
Wow. So we know this next guy I'm going to mention. You know him from his time developing in Rochester. I knew him in his time in Lansing when I covered him when I was a reporter at the NBC affiliate there, and that's Ryan Miller. He came in with a lot of accolades, man. I think Millsy's had a great career.
Who's that?
Ryan Miller.
Ryan Miller. Yeah, I remember Ryan Miller.
Talk to me a little bit about what that was like with him there. And, he came in with, like I said, all these accolades, man. And I know there've been a lot of players like that have come through in your time there, but what do you remember about Ryan Miller, and what do you think was maybe unique about him?
Well, yeah, certainly he's one of the all-time greats, and we've had so many all-time greats here in Rochester. The thing that stands out most to me about him is he wasn't any bigger around than a pencil. Yeah, I couldn't figure out how he could hold up all that padding. He looked like one of those coat stands.
Well, he did. Yeah,
but he just grew year by year. He just was steady. He had he always put his best foot forward and worked hard and was very focused. I thought he was just very focused and just continually worked and improved. I always wanted to go up to him though and straighten that helmet on. You know, when he puts the helmet up on his head, it's how it's cocked to one side. I just always wanted to straighten that helmet out on his head.
Well, I watching Vancouver, and correct me if I'm wrong, and again, I know you will. Jacob Markstrom, I believe my first year that I was there was a rookie, right, in 09. And great. You know what, Don? It's so cool, and I want you to talk to this because you have seen dozens and dozens of players, whether it's guys on your team or guys that have come through there, make it to that next step. A guy like Markstrom, I mean, for example, what kind of feeling do you get when you see that, when these are players that you're friends with and you have a relationship with, and maybe you're still close with them?
Well, there's so many players out there that have gone through here. It's just unbelievable. You talk about goaltenders that go back to Grant Fuhrer was even here.
Was he really?
Yeah, and played some games. He was on a rehab stint and he was here. You got Charlie Huddy played a season here at his last year of his career, and guys like Lindy Ruff and Doug Huda, who's where's he? Detroit now, I think. He's coaching.
I saw,
yeah. So those guys are still coaching, but some great names that have come through. And then you go back to before my time in our Hall of Fame. You've got Don Cherry, Al Arbor, Jerry Cheevers, Gibson, on and on and on. So just so many great players have come through here. The thing is that, like, I've been watching the playoffs here off and on a little bit, and every team that is playing has had one or two guys that have come through Rochester.
Yeah.
This whole playoff season. The only team that doesn't is I haven't seen anybody with Tampa yet, but they're all Syracuse guys. So
right.
Hopefully they'll get beat. Oh, I didn't say that.
Speaking of that building, do you have any kind of ballpark guess how many times you hit your head on the concrete in that barn, in the booth? Syracuse? Concrete?
You mean the iron bar across the top?
No, I always got my head on it was like the.
Oh, as you're walking down.
Yeah. Angles, man. I took that thing about every time I was in that barn.
Yeah, well, I've hit that a few times. Well, I mean, you know, with the size of my melon, it's hard to miss something like that. But I was talking about the iron bar across the top of the counter there, because you stand up.
Yes.
You have to stand up and look out over because you can't see what right below you. But let me count. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I've got at least 8 lumps on the back of my head from Syracuse, that iron bar. You know, another place that had that, I always had that problem, was Colorado College at the Broadmoor. The old rink at the Broadmoor.
It's different now.
Probably, yeah. That was the old rink at the Broadmoor Hotel, but that was a bad one too.
Yeah, I've been in the new World Arena, which is completely, that's a perfect building for an American League team to me. I mean, it's 6,000-7,000. It's way up, which I like. And do you prefer as a play-by-play guy, you want to be lower? You want to be higher? Where are you at with all that?
I want all my games to be like Cleveland.
Like Cleveland. Man, we had the setup. I'm sure it's still the same.
It was just absolutely perfect. I mean, right in the middle is the front row of the upper deck, and it
was a club level, Don. It was like midway up. You're right.
You could see it. You could see it. I mean, it's like you're close enough to see and hear what the players are saying on the bench, and yet you can see the whole arena, and you could actually see the corners, the near corners from where you were. And now they've got, I don't know when the last time was you were in that building, but they've got a scoreboard that's bigger than a bus. And so I actually find that I end up doing play-by-play off of that scoreboard because it's bigger and it feels closer than the rink. It's a great, I love going to that place.
Yeah, it was the real deal, man. And, to me, it was one of the best 5 jobs in that league. And the year that I left, that summer, we were actually Dave Dombrowski, I'm sure you remember Dave's name. He's a broadcast liaison guru there and was my boss. And they were going to move us. Did they eventually move it to the other side, way up top, or they still leave you guys down in the club level?
The home TV games are done on the other side, but the radio is still done at the same spot.
All right. So since we're on the topic, give me a couple of your faves. It doesn't have to be in the American League. It can be anywhere. Of your favorite spots that you do games at, or you have done games at.
I don't know the name of the arena, but it was in Zurich, Switzerland.
Zurich. Spengler Cup?
Spengler Cup, yeah.
Cool. What was unique about that? What'd you like?
What an atmosphere. So we'd play 4 games a day. We went there twice. We'd play 4 games a day. And first game was at, I think they played at 10, 2, 4, and 8, something like that. So anyway, you go to the building and it's lined up. The doors open at 9 o'clock. And the line is just, the whole building is surrounded by people. They come in at 9 o'clock and they get to their seats and they just stand up and start jumping up and down and singing all these songs through the whole game. It's just totally nonstop. So the game comes to an end and everybody files out right through the doors at the end, and the building is empty. They all go back around, they get in line at the front doors and come right back in, and they're in there for the second game. And they did this each game all night long. And the thing was the chants and the cheers and the singing, and it was just incredible. What an atmosphere that was. I loved it.
Is that the favorite spot?
That was the most fun I think I've had. But on the other hand, it was kind of eerie because about 4 or 5 rows down in front of me, they weren't watching the hockey game. They were all turned around looking at me doing the play-by-play. So
a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and Jody Gage was actually, he wasn't playing. He was kind of working on the radio with me, and he's just howling, looking. He's, these people are just looking right at you. So,
that's awesome, man.
Hershey's a great building. They went from one of the worst buildings in the league to the best. Yep. So Cleveland's good. I enjoyed some of the NBA buildings. The only thing there was we were quite a ways away. I really like the building in Buffalo, that new building there. That was great. Yeah. Unfortunately, I didn't get to see the one in Grand Forks, which is supposed to be the best building in the world of hockey.
It is. You got to get there at some point. Call Hennessy. I'm sure he can get you a pass.
Yeah.
I'll get you a pass. You ever want to go when I'm up there, man? That place it's unbelievable. I mean, I told you last week when we were talking, Red Berenson always told me it was the nicest arena in the world. And I remember going there the first time, and Dave Hackstall, now an assistant with the Leafs, was the coach then. And Hack said to me, walked in, we were having dinner, our crew, and he said, "Benny, what'd you think of the rink?" And I said, "Red was right." And he was like, "What'd he say?" Like he wanted to know what Red said. And I told him, and he goes, "Wow, he really said that?" And I was like, "Yeah, man, he told me that for years, after doing, 200 games at Yost, where Yost was, Syracuse was, I always thought Syracuse was very unique, Don, and I hated this concrete thing, and climbing up the stairs was a pain in the ass. But the vantage point, I always loved it in that building, man. You're literally right over it, man.
Yeah, you're right in the play, probably more than anywhere else. You're directly above the penalty box, and you have to lean out over the edge and you look straight down into the penalty box. So yeah, you're right there on top of it. That's for sure. Yeah.
Just a couple more things I want to ask you about. You have a friendship with Rick Peckham. Tell the story, if you don't mind, that you told me last week when we chatted and reconnected about you and Rick and your connection.
Well, actually, we didn't really have much of a connection. He was the broadcaster that was here before me. He was here for 7 years. Then we had John Gertler that came in for 2 years, and then I came along. But Peckham is, I believe his wife is from here. He comes back every year to the Amerks golf tournament, and what a nice man, just a nice man. So I really don't have any close connection to him other than that I've known him and talked to him for many years.
Okay. Is there anything we didn't cover? Because this has been a lot of fun reconnecting with you, Don. Is there anything you want to add before we do our last segment, which is 2 minutes in the sin bin? I think we talked about that. Is there anything else you'd like to get out there to the people?
Oh, I don't know, other than that this is a tough business, but it's a great business. People will say, what a life, I just run around, go to games and stuff. I tell them, yeah, the first 2 years were great. The last 50 have been a drag. but on the other hand, in the hour that we've sat here talking about, how many common names have we mentioned? You've mentioned some, I've mentioned, and we've known each other. It's a very small world, and yet it's a big world, this world of hockey. And there's so many friendships, so many people that you come across, are just great individuals. In the game of hockey, I think I'm counting on one hand the number of people that I didn't get along with. Other sports, I can't say the same as that, but hockey has just been tremendous individuals throughout, up and down.
Yeah, I'm right there with you on that. I like to say it's a tangled web. Like everybody knows everybody, man. It's whether you're, 35-40 or 65-70. I mean, everybody knows everybody. It's one thing I've always loved about it, like you said.
Yeah.
So now I did give you a little bit of warning on this last week, right? About the 2 minutes.
Yeah, but I haven't been able to come up with any answers.
Excuse me, you're a radio broadcaster. You'll wing something here. So typically what I do in this segment, since we started doing these on the Sin Bin, is I'd have like a list of questions, but I'm gonna kind of throw one out there where you can have several answers. And when I start the clock, the topic will be your favorite moments. And the second topic will be, most memorable players. I'm going to go that direction on you. Is that cool?
Those are the answers I don't have.
What do you have? I'm always willing to work with you, Don.
But the thing is, there's been so many great players. How do you pick the best? And the other part of that is, in what respect are you wanting to say the greatest players? Because there's guys that have been just tremendous on ice players that they're okay off the ice. On the other hand, there's guys who are maybe borderline pro hockey players, but the nicest guys in the world. I'm not saying they're all like that. I'm just saying as an example. So you got. Now, what are you looking for as far as the players I remember? You're looking for best on ice. You're looking for the best pure goal scorer. You're looking for the nicest personality. Are you that sort of thing. So,
what do you have? Do you have anything in regard to that? If we go there.
Well, as far as players are concerned, did you start the clock? I don't like clocks.
Start the clock. All right, so let's do players that you have, and then we'll do. You have moments.
I can come up with some of those.
All right. So here we go. I'll start the clock. Here's 2 minutes in the Sin Bin with Don Stevens, legendary broadcaster of the Rochester Americans. He is going to, in 3, 2, 1, talk about some of his favorite players and what he remembers about them. The floor is yours, Don.
All right. So you already mentioned when we were talking about him, Ryan Miller, and just playing great hockey. We've had so many great goaltenders here in Rochester over the years. Jody Gage was the all-time scorer and point producer and everything. Just an incredible. What he could do with the puck was amazing. I could see him. He'd score off the back of the goalie, and I saw him one night flip the puck over top from behind the net, over top, hit the goalie in the back of the head, and it rolled in the net. And the things that he could do are just incredible with the puck. Don Lever was a great player. Steve Ludzik was another one. Ray Shepard, back when I first got here, tremendous hands. He wasn't very fast, but tremendous hands and unbelievable patience with the puck. So he was a great player. But, around the league, you always look at guys like Darren Hadar and Mitch Lamoureux and Peter White and those guys you hated, right? You didn't ever want to play against the guys like that. Another one who played in Rochester was a tremendous player and great goal scorer was Paul Gardner. And then I mentioned a couple of names earlier on defense, like guys like Lindy Ruff and Doug Huda. And so those are some of the players that I think, but there's just so many more great players out there that I haven't mentioned.
That's terrific. Well done, my friend. So we got about 30 seconds left, and this will be just a single question. The best thing about your job?
I thought you were going to go with my things that I remembered.
I shifted it up on you.
Oh, well, but I had a good answer for the things that I remembered.
Well, give me that then.
Okay. No, I forgot what they were. No, I remember some things about pushing an airplane to get it started. I got to hear this. We can go over 2 minutes now. Being arrested at the border for smuggling players. That was a good night.
Oh, boy.
And we had the LA Times Trade of the Year when I was in Seattle. And then non-hockey, I remember the night that we won the U.S. Open Cup for soccer. I did the soccer team for 13 years.
Cool.
And so there was a lot of great nights. So those are some of the things I remember. Now, what was your next question?
That's it. We're out of time. We went over by 25 seconds, but you, my friend, get as much time as you want, man. So this was a lot of fun. It was great to see you again, Don, and catch up and reminisce. And I have so much respect for all the time you put in your career. And like I said in the beginning, man, Richie told me right away, he said, you need to be friends with Don Stevens because he's the man. So that's the truth.
Well, that's very nice. That's very kind.
Well, you know, Richie, I mean,
it's not true. It's not true, but I mean, it's very nice.
It is true. You remember Richie and Marty Reasoner. I know you do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, very much so.
Well, this has been great, Don, and, wish you the best and hope to see you back, hear you back in the booth and for year 51, man. Year 51. I'll be 50 November 3rd.
Okay, we're done. I'm tired of talking to you. Hey, next time we talk, could you at least age a little?
A little?
I mean,
I have to dye my hair now.
You look exactly the same.
I guess that's a good thing, right?
Yeah, it is.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of No Holden Back here on the Sin Bin. For the legend, the dean of the American Hockey League, 51 years coming up, Don Stevens. My name is Ben Holden. This has been a lot of fun. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time with an all-new episode.
You've been listening to the No Holden Back Podcast. For the latest news around minor league hockey, download the Sin Bin app, now available in the Google Play and Apple app stores.